Yo, what's going on, people? We're gonna get this thing started, man. In a second, man. Just give me a second. Kev, what's up, brother? I'm gonna get started in like 3 minutes. Roadmaster, what's up, brother? What's going on, man? Hey, Roadmaster, you a funny dude, man. I was on Unk. I dropped. You said, what did you say? Elaine's boss called him or something, man. You had me laughing, man. Oh man. But nah, how's everybody doing, man? I of course everybody heard the news that your boy Scott is no longer with us. And there's gonna be plenty of time to talk about that, you know what I mean? But coaching searches and mock drafts, I mean the off season's gonna be full of that. You get what I'm saying? I wanna take a look back today before we look forward, man. This is the Bryce Young retrospective. And we're gonna look back and where we came from and how the hell we got here. We're gonna spend a brief time just talking about Bryce Young's offseason, but I really want to do kind of a breakdown of game by game analysis. And Omar, what's up, brother? A breakdown of just how he's done, every single game, and then I'm gonna round that up and just kind of putting context to his numbers, right? Like, when was Bryce Young collecting most of his yards? What can we get from it? And this is the type of player that we can really is this the type of player we can look to for, to be our future quarterback. So with that said, let's get started. Yeah, man. So as the Panthers traded up to the number one overall pick. And I'm not gonna spend a lot of time, in the off season, leading up, but we gotta talk about, it a little bit. Um, the Panthers had traded up to the number one overall pick, and when the before the Panthers were there, the consensus was that the Bears, Rocket 81, what's up, brother? The Bears, when the Bears was there, the consensus is that Bryce Young was gonna be the number one overall pick. When the Panthers traded up to that number one overall pick, CJ Stroud, we're talking Vegas. Vegas, the odds shifted to the Panthers. But as time started to wane and time started to go on, it became very clear, at least the media made it very clear, that it's most likely, uh, I think, Nicole is sugar mama. Oh, we got him. Hey, bro, I ain't gonna get through it, man. Y'all got me laughing, bro. Hey, when he got out of that damn truck and she threw all them titties on him, man. I thought something was going on. Hey, NC Southbound, what's up, bro? Yeah, the Bears fleeced us. So after the Bears fleeced us and the media convinced David Tepper that he was right to take Bryce Young, we took him. So we got Bryce Young. I was at the fucking I was at the draft party. I walked Slam out. I was upset, but this ain't about me. So we're hearing rumors about Bryce Young, ingratiating himself with the team. He's down in I think he was down in Texas throwing to some receivers. Some videos came out, motherfuckers running routes in the shorts. Oh, Bryce looking good. Adam Thielen's talking about Bryce Young's timing. Y'all remember all this, right? Oh, he's a veteran. His timing's impeccable. Yada yada yada. You know, fast forward mini camp. I believe it was around this time that the infamous, the infamous decision to name Andy Dalton a starter, and then 24 hours later, backtrack and name Bryce Young the starter. And and everyone knows what we traded. We traded what? We traded two first round picks, a second round pick, and DJ Moore for him. So, Bryce Young moves on as a starter. We're moving on to training camp. Right. We're in training camp. So word is Bryce Young starts training camp on fire. Now need I remind you, this is no pads, no full contact, right? Bryce Young's on fire. Deep balls here and there. You know, I did throw it out there that there's no real pass for us, so we can't take nothing out of it. I was told to shut up, but this ain't about me. So, Bryce Young's on fire. That lasts about a week and some change. They put the pads on. You hear some ramblings here and there about Bryce Young having, good days, sometimes bad days. Defense turns it up. Uh, joint practice comes around. Joint practice comes around before the first preseason game, and during that time of the preseason, it was the Jets, if I don't if I don't recall correctly. And Bryce Young had a good showing against the Jets. I don't remember exactly. There's people watching, so people were kind of recording the stat line of what was going on. But overall, people said that Bryce Young did well. I think from someone's hand count, he completed about 60% of his passes, and this is against a team that was a top 5 defense. So people are excited. We're all excited. Jets whooped us in the joint practice. Yeah, you see, it's the stands, bro. I don't know. I'm trusting a lot of people that were saying he played well in the joint practice, yada yada yada. It was the stands that was basically reporting it. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I don't have any footage to corroborate how well he did in the joint practice, but Roadmaster, I'm leaning heavily towards what you put out there because I mean, based on what we've seen, these legends about Bryce Young, dominating is they don't sound like something that could really be happening. You know what I mean? So nevertheless, we moving on, right? So that joint practice, and I heard Brian Burns played well in that joint practice too. It was a good showing for my defense. So people are going, oh man, well that was a top defense last year. Surely that means something. He's connecting with Adam Thielen in practice. Just tearing it up. Then he's playing the Jets and he's looking good. I mean, we got to take something from this. Then we go into the preseason. And the preseason was rough for Bryce Young, to say the least. To say the least. Let me pull the preseason stats. Jets game, he didn't look too great. It wasn't until the Lions game, it was shaky. If y'all guys remember, The fans was getting up here saying, "Oh, it only looks bad because we're not running our best plays, and all the other teams are running their best plays, but we're not running our best plays." That's what's going on, right? Y'all remember that, man? You get what I'm saying? So hence this was a prelude. We didn't know, but this was a prelude to what we would hear in the regular season about the play calling. Now, need I remind you something I did skip over is that this fan base, media, and the whole nine was all at a consensus that Bryce Young was in the perfect situation. An all-star head coaching staff, a veteran wide receiver group, a good mixture of wide receivers. You had your veteran Adam Thielen, who's going to work the underneath. TMJ, 30. You led the league in yards per reception last year. DJ Charks, the deep threat guy, he's tearing it up, and that's the guy who was tearing it up in training camp. So everyone agreed that this was the best situation. Face it, we were all sold a bill of goods. Facts, Andrew. Appreciate you being here, sir. Good to see you. So where was I? Preseason. It was a rough preseason. And, he didn't actually look good. He actually didn't look good until we played the Lions in the last preseason game. And I forgot to give me a second, guys. I'm going to see if I can I forgot to bring up those stats. Yeah, NFL preseason, and everyone was excited. I forgot we lost 26-17. A sign of things to come. Bryce Young went 7 for 12 for 73 yards, 1 touchdown, and I remember him doing a little running too. Yeah, he ran for three times for 21 yards. This was the game that made everybody hype. Those first 2 preseason games, Bryce Young was just warming up, but this showed what we really have in Bryce Young, right? And need I remind you is that we had to take that game. There's a little caveat to that game. Our wide receivers were banged up around that time. The vanilla offense excuse. Yeah. It was a prelude. It was a prelude to the bullshit we had coming from this fan base. Need I remind you guys that our receivers were banged up, but the Lions sat all of their starters. So most of our starters played all of their backups. And that was most people didn't want to hear that. Most people, hey, whatever, he was looking good. I mean, he was looking like he was in Alabama. I mean, I saw some guys coming off the edge. He spun around, scrambled, and I mean, he was looking good. You'd be a hater if you said, Marcos Cass, what's up, brother? Bengals OC Brian Calhoun. Interesting. The first guy usually isn't the serious one, though. Be honest with you. Can only vanilla with CMC and DJ gone. So that was the preseason. Best game was our starters playing the Lions backups. Bryce Young finishes the preseason throwing only 24 throws, completing 14 of them, with a 58.3 completion percentage, 129 yards, 1 passing touchdown, being sacked 3 times, and a QBR of 87. It is what it is. One of the biggest claims of fame back then was that all the other major quarterbacks that were on the top of the draft class, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, and your boy from Tennessee, who I can't think of right now. Everyone was saying, well, Bryce Young was the only one that didn't throw an interception, right? And I think, I think Bryce Young had a rushing touchdown. I don't know. I don't see it up here, but I could have sworn I remember him running one in. Well, let's pretend he did, just for the sake of me, not sounding like a hater. Let's give him a rushing touchdown during the preseason. Will Levis, appreciate you, bro. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Marcos Cash. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would make sense for the Panthers to hire a GM before they hire a coach, unless you're hiring a coach that you're giving full power to, and you're basically making him the coach and the GM. In which case, the GM you bring in would only be like an assistant salary cap guy who crunches the numbers and makes things work. Because that's kind of the Bill Belichick situation. Bill Belichick, is de facto coach and GM, but he's not back there crunching the numbers, trying to figure out how to structure contracts. You get what I'm saying? But he says, I want this guy, I want this type of player. He's the one who builds the team. So yeah, but if we're gonna do the traditional way with separations of powers, yeah, the GM should come first, in my opinion. I've never built a team before, but it just seems like it makes sense to do it like that. So one of the big things is that, of that stat line that I just mentioned to you guys, uh, was the 5.4 yards per attempt. And I think in the first preseason game, it was like 4.2 or something like that, and 5.4 yards per attempt. Again, a stat line like that would have been the worst in the NFL the past 5 years. You'd have to go back. No, my bad. You would have to go back to, I think it's 8 years, and it's Blaine Gabbert. You would have to go back that far to find a quarterback during the regular season who had 5.4 or less yards per attempt. And Bryce Young had 4.2 in the first game, and he ended up with 5.4 for the preseason. So immediately, something goes off of my head. I'm like, something's wrong with this offense. Something's really wrong with this offense. I mean, anything he's done, I'll take with a grain of salt because we're literally just dinking and dunking. He's not stretching the ball, right? And people got on me for that, but that's a reoccurring theme. let me 1 second, guys. We're gonna give me 30 seconds, or we're gonna roll into the regular season. So yeah, we rolled into the regular season. It's an away game. It's Atlanta, right? And I mean, to say Bryce Young looked bad would be a freaking understatement. Um, he looked scared. He looked like the game. Hold on, I was refreshing. I hope you guys can still hear me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kevy Kev said it best. What's up, brother? Step on that like button. Um, Bryce Young looks scared. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen a quarterback, you know, about to break down in tears. And I'm not disparaging him or trying to be funny, but the game was simply too big for him at that moment. He came into Atlanta, um, 38 throws. And maybe that's not the kind of offense you want your rookie to do, but he went for 20. He went 20 for 38, 146 yards, 52% completion percentage. Completed 52.6% of his passes. Remember when I was saying that Blaine Gabbert, you got to go back to when was it, man? 2008 or something. I can't remember. I might be wrong. It was a long time. It was like 8 years ago. Blaine Gabbert was the worst yards per attempt for a season at 5.4. Bryce Young's yards per attempt, his first game was 3.8. So 24 38, 146 yards, 52% completion, 3.8 yards per attempt, one touchdown, two interceptions. And in this game, uh, what's the safety name? It escapes me now. He literally threw two identical interceptions to the safety, practically just holding on to the ball too long and not throwing it into the right window, right? Which will be a reoccurring theme with Bryce Young. And guys, I'm gonna go game by game. This is gonna probably be a long episode. I ain't gonna front. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. If somebody wants to come chop it up with me, I might chop it up with you guys, cut the episode in half, do it by first half of the season, second half of the season, whatever. Um, but you know, in that Falcons game, a reoccurring theme would happen for the rest of the season. Bryce Young would go on in roughly 10 or 11, I think it was 10 or 11 games, collect 40% or more of his passes on the last drive of the game. He can only throw ducks past 5 yards. Everything else is screens. He can't even do. And I'm gonna go through this list of these games, and I'm gonna break it down by quarter, just showing you guys where the yards, where most of the yards are accumulated because he played 16 games and didn't get 3,000 yards. So it was a rough season. Um, Bryce, anybody remember Teddy Bridgewater in Carolina? That Bryce, though, in my opinion, with more backfield mobility, making it look thrilling and exciting. Anderson Moore were both over 1,000 yards. Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater was super efficient too. I think his completion percentage was like 68%. It was something very, very high. One of the things that the ownership really just shitted on him about is that he didn't have the arm strength to really, dial up the deep stuff, which I mean, Teddy Bridgewater's arm strength is, a cannon compared to Bryce Young's at this point. So, only if we could turn back the hands of time. So we roll into New Orleans the next week, man. Week 2, Bryce Young, 66% of his passes, 4.6 yards per attempt. Still, again, remember, records 5.4. Records 5.4. He completed 4.6, one touchdown, no interceptions. Same thing again. Last drive, last 153 yards, roughly 65 of those yards were collected on the last drive of the game. So then, Minnesota, and of course we lost that game 20-17. Minnesota, Bryce Young cracks his first 200-yard game. But at this point, the word is out on Bryce Young. The word is out. He can't throw deep. Bryce Young can't throw deep. This is why the Vikings come into Carolina and they said, you know what, we're going to blitz our safeties. We give up about 5 sacks on that game. 3 of them came from their strong safety. Just showing a lack of respect for Bryce Young's arm strength. But he cracked 200 yards for the first time, 6.4 yards per attempt. Yeah, so it is what it is. Now, I don't want to say this incorrectly because I think which game did Andy Dalton play? Nah, you don't need a safety back deep. That's a fact. uh did he play? Yeah, he played the Seattle game. That's what it was. He played the Seattle game. Give me a second, guys. Got a little freezing problem going on. So that's what it is because I wanted to bring up Andy Dalton. to talk about Andy Dalton. So Bryce Young, just if you haven't been keeping score, it's week. It's week two, and Bryce Young gets hurt. Bryce Young gets hurt. Now a lot of people say, yeah, this is when the craziness starts. A lot of people were saying, oh, it's a fake benching. He really didn't get hurt, right? But there was clips out there, Bryce Young getting tackled from behind, and when he was trying to make it to the edge, and his ankle kind of rolling a little bit. And so the whole thing about him being hurt, it doesn't hold weight, especially after you look at this type of game that Andy Dalton had. From all intents and purposes, Andy Dalton had the type of game that if you bench your quarterback and your backup comes in and has this kind of game, then your regular starter isn't coming back. So we go into we in Seattle. We're at Seattle. We're on the road, hostile environment to play in. Andy Dalton goes on to throw 58 passes for 34 yards, 2 touchdowns, 361 yards, which is more yardage than Bryce Young had collected in the first two games. Let that sink in. And the offense looked completely different. I mean, Bryce Young's highest yards per attempt was 4.6, and Andy Dalton came in 6.2 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. Longest pass was 47 yards. He was getting things down the field. DJ Chark started showing up. Adam Thielen disappeared all year. He's showing up. We're finally finding the receivers. They're getting open. All of a sudden, because the first 2 weeks, everyone was making these excuses that, well, the Panthers, and yeah, I didn't want to get too far without saying this. Week two, the narrative started being that the Panthers receiver have the lowest yards of separation in the league. So yards of separation, again, you go back to the previous episode. I'll touch on it very, 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 and very quickly. Yards per separation, there is no stat in the NFL. There's no stat currently in the NFL that looks at every single receiver when a ball is snapped and judges how far away they are from a defender. It just doesn't exist. But this stat is often told and manipulated to make it sound like it's that. Yards of separation is a catch point stat, i.e., when you catch the ball, how far away is your nearest defender? A lot goes into that. The quarterback's decision. Is the quarterback trying to force the guy the ball? Is he ignoring other guys that are wide open? So it's a very misleading stat. And in fact, you'll find that a lot of times the guys who are high volume receivers that get the ball no matter what, they usually have a lower yards per separation. So that's also something to remember because the quarterback just forces it there. But it's more of an indication of who the quarterback is throwing to, and it can be easily skewed if the quarterback is just choosing to throw to receivers that are covered. You know what I mean? If you line up 20 yards off the line of scrimmage and throw a bubble screen, you greatly skew the yards of separation. That's literally how that stat works. That's why it's not quoted everywhere, as because there's a lot of it's fun and it's interesting, but it's not a tell-all stat. So Andy Dalton comes in and just straights up, obliviates anything and all excuses. Well, he should have, but people kept making the excuses. The Lions game Is week 5. That saw his biggest touchdown totals, but it also saw him make some of the most boneheaded ass plays we've seen him make. Um, so Bryce Young had his highest output. He threw 41 throws, 247 yards. Uh, his highest yards per attempt, 6, 3 touchdowns, which is great. But he threw 2 interceptions. I believe 2 of which was pick sixes. I think he threw 2 pick sixes in this game. 354 yard yak. LOL. What's that stat? Whose yak is that? Kev. Yeah, that's the game. I mean, that pick six that got thrown. It might not have been pick six. He threw an interception in this game to the defensive end. shit, shit is crazy. You get what I'm saying? So that's the Lions game. Another loss. We play the Dolphins. Now the Lions and Dolphins saw us giving up 42 points. We lost to the Lions 24-42, lost to the Dolphins 21-42. And it's the first time you will ever hear me say that it wasn't the defense fault for a team that gave up 40 points. Bryce Young continuously put the defense in bad situations in both games. And in fact, in the Lions game, it felt like we held out as much as we could and kept the game close as we could until eventually the offense wasn't doing anything and just everything just fell apart. That's a reoccurring thing. Um, let's talk about the Texans game. So people are losing hope at this point. People are losing hope. And, some of the Bryce Young stands are starting to wear out. And they're starting to come around. And then the Texans come to town. The Panthers beat the Texans 15-13. Bryce Young throws for 235 yards, 7.6 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown. Mainly, it was a defensive game. it really came down to Bryce Young not really doing anything the whole game. Again, that last drive completed some passes. Well, you always guys always hear me allude that Bryce Young has one good game and about 3 good drives for the whole season. This is that drive that happened. Bryce Young played shitty the whole entire game. And then he drove the team every bit of 75 yards down for the score. One thousand three fifty four is 646. That's average in the air. Oh, okay, I got you. I got you. Different from yards per attempt, though. But yeah, I got you. Um, but the narrative is Bryce Young beat C.J. Stroud. But the people in the same world understand that the Panthers defense has a great defense, and we held the Texans because Bryce Young. I mean, C.J. Stroud was killing it. I mean, his shit was his it was becoming a thing of legend. I mean, there was games with he's down with 70 seconds left on this clock. He scored 300-yard games. Just insane. I mean, most passes without an interception for a rookie. I mean, he's killing it, right? So he comes to Carolina, has one of his worst games of the season, and we come out there with a win. And people were saying, this is it. It took a long time, but he's getting better. You know, Bryce Young has in fact translated. Shout out to my man on in fact translated. But this is, people are saying this is what we're waiting for. Bryce Young has arrived. The season is saved. He's finally getting it right now. I mean, if he's finally getting it, it's cool. But no one reconciled the whole receivers aren't getting open thing. So were the receivers always getting open, but Bryce Young's getting better, or the receivers getting open? So like no one reconciled that, but whatever. We're moving past that. The entire sports world knows that we have a great defense. We just need a quarterback. Evidently, our fans didn't know because they swore up for down Bryce Young beat CJ Stroud. So Bryce Young has arrived in the Texans game. He was happy, you know. This is the first time I'm hearing people say he's confident. The confidence is oozing out of him, right? So, okay. The new confidence, new improved Bryce Young goes to play the Colts. And we're not goes because it was a home game. We end up losing to the Colts 13-27. Bryce Young, I guess because this is new improved Bryce Young, we might as well put the ball in his hand, let him win for us. Bryce Young throws the ball 39 times, completes 24 passes for 174 yards, 4.4 yards an attempt, one touchdown, three interceptions. One touchdown, three interceptions. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not mistaken. One of those pick sixes happened in this game. Bryce Young was sacked 4 times in this game. So a little bit of a high, one step forward, 5 steps back. I mentioned that because that's going to be a reoccurring theme. Bryce Young has the opportunity to take on the backup quarterback with the Bears. We lose 13-6. Bryce Young, 21 for 38, 185 yards, 4.9 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, no interceptions. We play the Cowboys. We get dusted by the Cowboys. 10 for 33, 10 of 30, 10 to 33. 16 of 29, he went 123 yards on 29 passes. 123 yards on 29 passes. 4.2 yards per attempt, horrific. One touchdown, one interception. Remember, 4.2, 4.9, 4.4. The worst in the past 8 years has been 5.4 by Blaine Gabbert. Some real good company he's hanging with. And prior to the Texans game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we were 0-6. We'd start the season 0-6. And the game versus Seattle was the only game that we legitimately looked like we had a chance of winning. Bryce runs into a lot of sacks. That's a fact. I mentioned that he has the sixth most amount of time in the league under the blitz, 2.84 seconds. The blitz, 10th from a clean pocket, 10.94. So, there are 30 some 25 or 30 some more quarterbacks, 27 some more quarterbacks who hold the ball less than Bryce has. It has less time than Bryce. So it's very important to remember. Beat down by the Cowboys, close loss by the Texans, but not really. No. So this is after the Cowboys. This is where the streak starts. Tennessee, he goes 18 for 31, no touchdowns, 194 yards. If I'm not mistaken, this is where Frank Reich gets fired. This is where Frank Reich gets fired after this game. Then he proceeds to play the Bucks, 178 yards, no touchdowns, one interception. The Saints, 137 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The Falcons, 1 second, guys. Where am I at? The Falcons, we won. A second win in the season. We won 9-7. 9-7. Bryce Young completed 24 of his passes. I'm sorry, he completed 18 of 24, 167 yards, 7 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Now, that whole game, he was playing relatively he was playing horrible. I'm gonna call it. He was playing horrible. I mean, it was a 7-9 game. How well do you think he's gonna play? Shout out to the defense. He's playing horrible. And on the last drive, he completes 5 passes. He completes, yeah, was it 4? It was 4 passes. He completes 4 passes, 3 of which were highly inaccurate. One was very nice. DJ Chark, a back shoulder throw. Very nice pass by Bryce Young. He has a handful. He has a handful of nice passes on the season. You can't give him that. And we get in field goal range. We get the field goal, and we get the score. Now the legend starts to grow. People were saying in that last drive we saw confidence. We saw a different Bryce Young. This is what we've been waiting all season to see. Where has this been all season, is what people would say. Where has this been all season? And I mean, the Bryce stands completely blew their load the next week when we played the Packers. Fresh off one of the worst pass defense grades in PFF history, the Packers roll into Carolina. Now, for most of this game, Bryce Young, despite it being a bad defense, Bryce Young hovered around about 45% completion rate. And the second half, he got a lot more yards. Now, I often have to remind myself that this game was a loss because people treat it as if it was a win. Now, all Bryce Young did was what we routinely saw someone like CJ Stroud do in every single game. Bryce Young threw 36 times, completed 23 passes for 312 yards, 8.7 per attempt, his best of the season against one of the worst intermediate teams, and 2 touchdowns. One of the things I pointed out in this game is that this is the worst team when covering the intermediate passes, specifically their terrible intermediate. We didn't see Bryce Young throw deep. We didn't see any of that. And we can't say that Bryce Young is better until we see him do things that we haven't seen him do. A lot of blown coverages in this game. Everyone kind of scoffed when I said that, but hey, it is what it is. A lot of blown coverages. Now, everybody's on the high. They blew their load after yeah, this is what we got to look forward to going into next year. Bryce Young has arrived. I warned people that hey, we've been down here before. The game wasn't really that impressive, guys. I put on my hater hat and tried to warn people. But whatever. We go to Jacksonville. We go to Jacksonville and we lose 0-26. And in the Packers game, we lost the Packers game, 30-33. And actually, let me backtrack. In the Packers game, Bryce Young was marching down the field in that last drive, and we simply ran out of time. I think we tried to spike the ball, kick a field goal. If we had more time, if we had 2 more seconds, most likely the Panthers would have won that game. So I would be remiss if I don't admit that at the very least. All right. But like I said, bad intermediate team. So we have this new and improved Bryce Young going into Jacksonville, and everyone's waiting to see this new improved Bryce Young. Bryce Young throws 32 passes, completes 19 of them for 112 yards, 3.5 yards per attempt. 3.5 yards per attempt, his worst of the season. No touchdowns, one interceptions. Now, one thing I forgot to mention that prior to this Packers game and throughout the Packers game, Bryce Young was about 45 passes away for breaking the record for the most amount of passes without a touchdown. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but we were tracking it. If you guys go back a couple of episodes, we looked it up and we were tracking the passes he needed. He fell about 40 short. So he was on a hell of a drought. 1, 2, 3, 4 games without a touchdown. Got to get me a PFF account. Facts. Love it. The numbers tell the real story, man. You get what I'm saying? If you make a claim, it should be easy to back up with numbers. You know what I mean? If Bryce Young's running for his life, he shouldn't be the sixth highest have the sixth most time in the league when under the blitz. That's not running for your life. That's holding the ball, or the 10th most from a clean pocket. So any statement should be able, to be corroborated by the numbers, right? So the Bryce running for his life line that's null and void, man. They tried it, but it's just not the case. But yeah. So we're moving on. He has one of his from the best game of his career. He proceeds to have two of the worst games of his career. So 112, no touchdowns, one interception in Jacksonville. He was sacked 6 times. I mean, he was just holding on to the ball. I mean, he was just giving up sacks. I mean, your boy. I forgot the defensive end from the Jaguars, but he was the first. He was the top 5 pick for them. He ended up having 4 sacks. Bryce Young walked himself into 2 of them. To be honest, he created 2 of them. But 0 to 26, the defense pretty much, and a reoccurring thing with this is that we see these big numbers, 26 points, 42 points. These were actually very good defensive games. I mean, the defense held on, gave the offense chance after chance. The offense not moving the ball, having to punt close to their own goal line, putting the defense with their back against the wall, and eventually they cracked. That was kind of the reoccurring theme of the season. So the last game. I mean, it was just the icing on the freaking cake. I mean, you couldn't have drew up a better game just to show how horrific Bryce Young has been. So the Panthers get shut out for the second week in a row. 0 to 26 in Jacksonville, 0 to 9 with Bucks. Bryce Young throws the ball 18 times, completes 11 of them, 94 passing yards. 94 passing yards. Out of the 94 passing yards, 40 of them, 44 of those yards came on one blown coverage. 44 on one blown coverage. And at the end of the half, he had 66 yards, meaning he had roughly 34 yards in the second half of the game. 34. Three sacks. And that concludes the season with Bryce Young. I even, the funny thing, I'm hearing people saying that last game was a good game. I mean, hit yourself in the head with a hammer at this point. What are you talking about? holding the ball too long, 94 yards. It's atrocious, man. I've never wanted a Panther game to be over so bad. Yes, yeah. That's a fact. I felt the same way, brother. So Bryce Young finishes the season playing 16 games, throwing 527 passes, 2,877 yards, 5.5 an attempt, the second worst in the past decade of NFL football. I just don't want to go past 10 years. Blaine Gabbert had 5.4. Bryce Young got 5.5. At least he's not the worst, right? 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4 pick sixes, tied for the most in history. Or it might be the tie for the most in rookie history. I don't know. It might be a rookie record, might be a rookie tie, might be an NFL tie. I don't remember. He was sacked 62 times. And that was his season. Hold on, let me get caught up. Nick Tri-State, what's up, brother? Yeah, hey Nick Tri-State, yeah, rebuild the offensive line, but this whole Bryce holding on to the ball thing, it was a problem in college, man. I mean, the best year at Alabama, he was sacked 46 times. So, it's a reoccurring. It's a problem. It's a problem. You build him an all pro, offensive line. He's gonna continue to hold the ball. And if I need that much for my quarterback to be average, we got the wrong guy. And Nick, you on that boat too, brother. Welcome, 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 welcome. Yeah, that's a top O line in college. Yeah. I couldn't speak on the O line in college, but I heard it was a good offensive line he had in Alabama and still got sacked 46 times. He's holding the ball. His whole thing was I need to create unorganized chaos, and that's why I thrive. You know what I mean? But that came with the downfall of, throwing a lot of sacks, um, a lot of I'm running myself into pressures. Um, can't block an NFL D line for 4 seconds. That's a fact. I mean, that's what he's trying. That's what he's trying to do. He can't see Elaine. He can't see it. Well, yeah, Andrew, that's a good point. You guys have watched for 10 weeks in a row that, well, the first 6 weeks of the season, the Panthers didn't really run anything under center. Then eventually it started to be a little more difficult because it's hurting the run game. So they started to go under center. But you started to notice a pattern very quickly that every time they were under center, they ran the ball up the middle. So then they try to switch it up. They try to roll out. They try to roll out sometimes with the play action, cut off half the field, and have Bryce Young just make a pass to a streaking wide receiver. Now, I don't want to misquote the stats, but if you guys go back a couple of shows, I had the stats up there that his worst completion percentage came from under center play action. I think it was like low 50s, like percentage or something like that. Knock, what's up, brother? It was horrific. So now it led to everyone says the play calling is vanilla. To Andrew's point, he can't see over the line. It severely limits the playbook. You go in shotgun so he can see, it limits the run game. You go in a center, he can't see over the line. So you got to maybe run the ball about 95% of the time. Maybe do a little rollout, try to get him to the edge and catch a slink team kind of sleeping. But that's kind of what's all you got. You're not going to see Bryce Young under center and do a traditional drop back. I saw it 3 times all season, and they were all incomplete passes or sacks. That's something to remember. Give me 30 seconds, guys. I'm gonna roll into the situational stats. and go from there. All right. I got a lot of situational stats, man, and just really the last thing I really got for you guys um, is I just wanted to. You guys often, hear me. I've said it. I said, listen, literally a dozen of his games, 40% or more of the yardage was collected on the last drive, not the second half, not the fourth quarter. Literally the last drive. Kev, his drop back short because his legs short. He said, Brad, they said Bryce Young had the brain of Peyton Manning and the exciting like Curry. Man, fucking whatever. So, whoever said that shit. Yeah, that was well, the Curry, the point guard thing was your owner. And I hate to disparage the young man, bro, but I've seen no fast processing. I've seen no highly intelligent. If we were going to backtrack to the preseason, there was a big argument on whether he should play or not. And someone straight up told me, I said, look, he gotta play to learn these NFL defenses. He already knows the NFL defenses. That's what I was told. Needless to say, the person that said that to me, they disappeared once Bryce Young got about 3-4 weeks into the season. So shout out to you, brother. Um, so let's take a look at this. So of Bryce Young's 2,780 yada 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 yards, nothing, right? Brain of Manning, legs of Danny DeVito. Oh man, yeah. Uh, so the first half yardage of Bryce Young of his 2007, just a hair short of 3,000 yards that he got, 1,235 of them was collected in the first half. And I'm just saying 2,000 some odd. Let me get you guys the exact number so I can be exact. So the fact checkers, won't get at me. 2,877 yards. Of 2,877 yards, only 1,235 of those yards were in the first half. 2,783 yards, 1,235 of them were in the first half of the games. In the second halves of the game, third and fourth quarter, Bryce Young, and let me before I get there, the 1,235 yards in the first half, Bryce Young has a 55.8 completion percentage in the first half. 55.8 completion percentage, 1,235 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So when it really matters, when the game really matters, Bryce Young is completing 54%, 55% of his passes. Candy Girl, what's going on? Bud, what's going on, brother? That's what we really got to remember. 55.8% of completions of his passes when it really matters. The second half, Bryce Young has 1,642 yards. So he has more yards in the second half than first half. This is what I've been telling you, right? I'm gonna go a little deep. I'm gonna go a tad bit deeper than that, though. But let's stick on just the the second half real quick. So 1,642 yards in the second half, 400 more yards than he has in the second half. He's completing 63% of his passes in the second half. He goes up 8 percentage points in the second half. Gee, I wonder why. So 6 of those now, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in the second half. So he has 3 more touchdowns, 2 more interceptions in the second half. Now, this is the part that's really this drives my point home. Guys, remember when I said Bryce Young has 1,235 yards in the first half? 1,038 of his yards came in the fourth quarter. Bryce Young has as many yards in the fourth quarter as he has in the first half, i.e., what I was telling you guys that he collects about 40% of his passing yards or more in most games on the last drive. In the fourth quarter, he's completing 62% of his passes, that garbage time, dink and dunk. Because when it really matters, Bryce Young is a 55% completion rate quarterback. But in the fourth quarter, he's completing 62.8% of his passes, 1,038 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's Bryce Young. I've been saying it all season. We got the we rest in peace, Stephen Hawkins. Had a huge brain too. Yeah. That happened a couple of years ago. He passed away. Are you calling Bryce Young Stephen Hawkins? I don't think he's that bad. Yeah, he's immobile, but I don't think he's that bad. You know what I mean? He got a little bit of athleticism. I don't think he's as smart either. Jogo Flacco had a better season than Bryce. He played 5 games. That's a fact. That's your quarterback. So when people talk about his stats, let's put it in context. When they say Bryce Young threw for 200 yards, let's not forget that 70 of those yards came on the very last drive, right? We gotta put context to it. Now, is this the type of guy that you really feel like, and shout out to my boy Kit One. We were having a discussion on 2020's channel yesterday, and he was saying that, oh, if we would have DJ, because you guys remember he found DJ Chark for 44 yards, and DJ Chark fumbled the ball, and it ended up being a touchback. And he said, well, if DJ Chark wouldn't have fumbled, we would have won. And that's a gross misstatement of the issue that we're facing. The problem is Bryce Young has not lined up for 4 quarters in any single game and competed with an opposing defense. Garbage yards is his name, is his game. I just told you that he has 1,200 in the first half, 1,038 in the fourth quarter. You're not going to find any discrepancy that wide of any quarterback in the NFL. But I'll remind you all again, we as Panthers fans were put here with Bryce because Nicole Tepper thought he was cute. That's our ownership. So, literally coming off one of the worst for a first round pick. This is one of the worst rookie seasons ever. It's not Jamarcus Russell bad. Said facts, but it's and we what Matt Rule wife told him to pick Chuba. You know what I mean? We have a very interesting, we have a very interesting fan base, leadership. Wait, did I lose? We have a very interesting leadership base. Not that, as a man, your woman can't be a good asset for you, but not in your professional life. You get hired to do a job. You don't ask your wife who to draft. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, it's very clear that his weaknesses have been exploited. Um, any quote unquote good game from Bryce Young doesn't pass even the most lightest level of scrutiny. It doesn't. I.e., I just told you guys that 40% of his yardage came in the last drive. So yeah, moving forward, we have to move on. We have to move on. And I'm not going to get too much into the Scott Fitter firing, but um, I think Scott Fitter leaving. I'm going to end on this note. Unc brought up the fact that how did he say it? He said he thinks that Scott Fitter got fired um, because he doesn't believe in Bryce Young anymore. Scott Fitter. And I'm thinking the opposite. I'm thinking that ownership could now be understanding, David Tepper could be understanding that we might need to clean house. Bryce Young was the wrong pick. A lot of feminine energy. Feminine energy is a good thing in its place. Not unqualified people making draft picks. Shout out to the women. As my fiance looks at me rolling her eyes. Um, that's that's all I got for you guys, man. I'm gonna wrap this up before I get in trouble at home, man. Y'all gonna get me in trouble, man. Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys pulling up, man, and I'm gonna see you next time, man. And I think my man Unc is gonna do a my man Unc's gonna be doing a what is he doing? He's doing the watch party for the Texans game, watching CJ Stroud. I'll come back up here and kind of appreciate that, Andrew. I'll come back up here, man. We'll start talking about implications of Scott Fitter being fired, head coach candidates, mock drafts. I guys, I'm gonna warn you. My mock drafts might not be as exciting. I'm all about building in the trenches, building the foundation. So you're not gonna see us trading up for the greatest quarterback or nothing like that. But we'll have fun. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a little fun with it. But yeah. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys, man. I appreciate you, man. We got 20 people in here, man. That's the most I've ever had on the non-game day, man. So I appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys next time, man. Peace.